A fortune awaited me in the billionaire's mansion, but the job came with one chilling, impossible rule. I was to be a ghost to his 6-year-old son, forbidden from ever speaking to the boy who had already driven away 18 nannies. The air in Alistair Sterling's mansion didn't feel like normal air. It was thinner, colder, and tasted of lemon polish and old money. I stood on a marble floor so white it hurt my eyes, my worn-out sneakers feeling like a personal insult to the decor. Across a desk the size of my old apartment sat the man himself. His suit was worth more than my car, and his eyes, a startlingly pale gray, scanned my resume with an expression of profound boredom. "You have no experience as a nanny," he stated, his voice a low rumble. It wasn't a question. "No, sir," I said, my own voice steady, despite the frantic thumping in my chest. The agency listed the position as a maid. "The duties are fluid," he clipped, tossing the paper aside. He leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. The movement was precise, predatory. "There is one child in this house. My son, Leo. He is 6. You will have noticed the turnover rate for nannies in this household is high. 18 in the last 18 months, to be exact." I had noticed. It was the talk of the domestic staffing world, a golden ticket of a job that no one could hold on to. "Your primary duties are housekeeping," he continued, his gaze pinning me to the spot. "However, the most important rule, the one that will determine whether you are here tomorrow or not, is this. You do not engage with my son. You do not speak to him. You do not touch him. You do not attempt to play with him. To him, you are a ghost, a shadow that cleans up spills. Is that understood?" I blinked. "Yes, sir. Perfectly." It was the strangest rule I'd ever heard. Why hire staff for a house with a child, and then forbid them from acknowledging him? But I needed this job. My sister's medical bills were a mountain, and I was at the bottom with a teaspoon. I'd have agreed to polish his shoes with my tongue if he'd asked. He must have seen the desperation in my eyes, because a flicker of something not kindness, maybe satisfaction, crossed his face. "Good. Mrs. Gable will show you your duties. Do not disappoint me." And that was it. I was hired. The first week was a blur of learning the vast, silent geography of the Sterling mansion. It wasn't a home, it was a museum. Every surface gleamed, every cushion was plump to perfection. It was sterile, beautiful, and utterly lifeless. The current nanny, a bright-eyed girl named Chloe, who couldn't have been older than 20, was the only source of noise. She'd follow Leo around, her voice a constant cheerful stream of, "Leo, look, a choo-choo train. Do you want to build a tower, Leo? How about a story?" And Leo was the ghost Mr. Sterling had described. He was a small, pale boy with his father's gray eyes, but where his father's were sharp and cold, Leo's were vast and empty. He'd sit in the middle of a playroom filled with every toy a child could dream of, and he wouldn't touch a single one. He'd just stare at a fixed point on the wall, completely still, as Chloe's chirpy voice bounced off him like a rubber ball against a stone wall. He never spoke, not a word. I cleaned. I polished silver that was never used, dusted books that were never read, and vacuumed rugs that were never walked on. And I watched. I watched as Chloe's cheerfulness began to fray at the edges. Her smile became tighter, her voice strained. She tried everything: puppets, songs, baking cookies he wouldn't eat. By the end of the 3rd week, I saw her crying silently in the pantry. By the end of the 4th, she was gone. Number 19 had arrived, a stern-looking woman with a degree in child psychology. I was cleaning the upstairs hallway when I heard the new nanny's approach. Her voice was firm, professional. "Leo, we are going to work on sensory integration. I want you to feel this textured ball. Can you describe it for me, Leo?" Silence. I peeked into the playroom. The new nanny was holding out a spiky ball. Leo hadn't even turned his head. He was staring at the wall, his small hands curled into loose fists in his lap. I felt a pang in my chest so sharp it took my breath away. He wasn't a problem to be solved. He was a little boy, drowning in silence. That's when my unorthodox approach began. It wasn't a conscious decision, not at first. I was assigned to clean Leo's room and the playroom daily. The first time I went in, Nanny number 19 gave me a sharp look, a clear warning to be invisible. I obeyed. I started dusting the shelves, moving with quiet efficiency. Leo was on the floor, staring at his wall. I didn't speak to him. I didn't look at him. But as I polished the wooden frame of a large, empty bookshelf, I started to hum. It was a soft, tuneless melody my own mother used to hum while she worked. I didn't even realize I was doing it. I did it every day. I'd enter his room, and the humming would start. A low, constant, unobtrusive sound. I'd clean his windows, and the squeak of the cloth would create a little rhythm. When I arranged his untouched stuffed animals, I started putting them in funny positions. A teddy bear driving a toy car, a plush giraffe reading a book to a fluffy lamb. I never acknowledged him, never indicated the little scenes were for him. I was just a ghost, humming and tidying. For 2 weeks, nothing changed. Nanny number 19 was getting frustrated, her professional tone sharpening into annoyance. I just kept my head down and did my work. Then, one afternoon, it happened. I had just finished setting up a scene where a blue dinosaur was having a tea party with a row of wooden soldiers. I was backing out of the room, my humming fading, when I saw it. Leo, who hadn't moved a muscle, slowly extended one small finger and gently pushed one of the toy soldiers, making it wobble. My heart stopped. He'd interacted. It was the tiniest of gestures, but it was more than anyone had gotten from him in months. The next day, emboldened, I did something different. While wiping down his small play table, I took 3 of the red building blocks from a large, untouched bin and stacked them into a simple tower. I finished my work and left. When I came back the following morning to clean, I saw it. Next to my 3 red blocks was a single blue block, placed carefully on top. My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't help the small triumphant smile that spread across my face. It was working. We were communicating in our own silent way. I picked up a yellow block, my hand trembling slightly, and placed it on top of the blue one. I turned to continue my cleaning, my heart soaring with a dangerous, forbidden hope. That's when a voice as cold and sharp as breaking ice cut through the silence from the doorway. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I froze, my hand still hovering in the air. Standing there, his face a mask of thunderous rage, was Alistair Sterling. My blood ran cold. The air crackled with his fury, and the vast silent room seemed to shrink around us. I snatched my hand back as if the yellow block had burned me. Leo from his corner didn't move a muscle, but I felt his stillness shift, becoming heavier, more watchful. I was just tidying, sir," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "The blocks were scattered. I find stacking them makes the bin look neater. It's more efficient." The lie was flimsy, pathetic, and we both knew it. Alistair Sterling's grey eyes narrowed, dissecting me, peeling back the layers of my desperation and seeing the truth underneath. He took a slow step into the room, his expensive leather shoes making no sound on the plush carpet. He was a predator closing in. "Your job is to clean, not to play," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "I told you the rule. The most important rule. You are to be invisible to him." He gestured vaguely in Leo's direction without looking at him. "Your predecessor, number 19, has a master's degree in developmental psychology. She engages him with professionally approved therapeutic techniques. You," he paused, his eyes flicking over my simple uniform, "wipe fingerprints off glass. Do you understand the difference?" "Yes, sir," I said, my gaze fixed on a point on the floor just past his shoes. "Look at me when I speak to you." I forced my head up. His face was a mask of controlled rage. "If I ever see or even hear a whisper of you attempting to interact with my son again, you will be gone. Not just from this house. I will personally see to it that you never work as a maid, a nanny, or even a dishwasher in this city again. You will be as much a ghost to the world as you are supposed to be to him. Is that clear?" "Crystal," I managed to choke out. Just then, from the corner of the room, came the smallest sound. It was barely a sigh, a soft puff of air, but in the crushing silence, it was like a gunshot. For a single, stunning moment, Alistair Sterling's focus broke. His head twitched towards Leo, It was the first time I had ever seen him truly look at his son. The moment passed in a flash. His icy gaze snapped back to me. "Get out," he commanded. I fled, my legs shaking so badly I was surprised I didn't collapse. As I stumbled into the hallway, I saw nanny number 19. Her name was Eleanor, I'd learned, standing by the door. A look of smug satisfaction on her face. She had heard everything. From that moment on, her professional condescension morphed into active surveillance. She watched me constantly, her eyes following me whenever I was near the playroom, just waiting for me to make a mistake. Any sane person would have stopped. I had a direct threat from one of the most powerful men in the city. My sister was relying on me, but I couldn't get the image of that yellow block out of my head. He had answered me. In his silent world, he had reached out. To stop now felt like a betrayal, like locking a door he had just learned to knock on. So our secret conversation continued, only now it was fraught with danger. I became a spy in the House of Silence. I learned Eleanor's schedule. When she took Leo outside for his structured fresh air time, I would slip into the playroom. My heart would pound as I added a single green block to our tower. When I came back the next day, a purple one would have appeared. Our tower grew, a secret, colorful pillar of rebellion, in the beige and gray room. The game evolved. I'd arrange his untouched crayons in a perfect rainbow. The next day, the blue and the green would be swapped. I'd park two of his toy trucks facing each other. The next morning, they'd be back to back. Each tiny change was a message, a confirmation that he was there, he was watching, he was listening. And with every message, the emptiness in his eyes seemed to recede, just a little. One Tuesday afternoon, fueled by a reckless surge of courage, I decided to push it further. Eleanor was in the kitchen, complaining to Mrs. Gable about Leo's complete lack of developmental progress. I had 5 minutes. I hurried into the playroom, my hands sweating. Instead of adding to the tower, I dismantled it. I took 4 red blocks and built a simple, square structure. 4 walls, no roof, an open box, a little house. I placed it right in the center of the playmat, a clear invitation. Then I fled, my pulse thrumming with fear and anticipation. The next 24 hours were agonizing. I cleaned on autopilot, my mind constantly circling back to that little blockhouse. Had he understood? Was it too much? Had I finally crossed the line that would get me fired? The next morning, I entered the playroom with my cleaning supplies, my hands trembling. Eleanor was thankfully absent. I forced myself to walk slowly to appear calm. My eyes darted to the playmat. The red block house was still there, and sitting right in the middle of it was a single, small yellow block. A gasp escaped my lips. He hadn't just added a block. He had understood the symbolism. He had put a person inside the house, a person in a home. Overwhelmed, I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. My gaze flew to the corner of the room, to Leo, and my world stopped. For the very first time, he wasn't staring at the wall. He was looking directly at me. His big, solemn gray eyes, his father's eyes, but so different, were fixed on my face, and in their depths, I saw it. Not emptiness, not a void, a flicker of connection, a question. In that moment I forgot everything. I forgot Alistair Sterling's threats. I forgot the rules, the danger, my sister's bills. I forgot I was supposed to be a ghost. All I saw was a lonely little boy, and all he saw was me. I met his gaze, and a real, unrestrained smile broke across my face, a smile of pure, unadulterated joy. A soft click echoed from the doorway. My head snapped around. Eleanor stood there, her phone held up, the camera lens pointed directly at me. A triumphant, venomous smirk twisted her lips. "Finally," she hissed, her voice dripping with malice as she lowered the phone. "Proof. Mr. Sterling is going to love this." Panic clawed its way up my throat, cold and sharp. The smile evaporated from my face, replaced by a mask of pure terror. Eleanor's smirk widened. She held up the phone, waggling it slightly, a digital trophy of my transgression. "That's a clear violation," she said, her voice sugary sweet but laced with steel. Engaging with the child, smiling at him no less. "I think that qualifies as interaction, don't you?" My mind raced, searching for an escape route, a denial, anything. But there was none. She had me. I looked from her triumphant face back to Leo. His gaze hadn't wavered. He was still looking at me, his small face unreadable. But his eyes held a new intensity. It was as if he understood the gravity of the situation, the sudden shift in the room's atmosphere. "Eleanor, please," I begged, my voice cracking. We were just... It's not what it looks like." "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like," she cooed, already turning to leave. "It looks like the incompetent maid finally overstepped her bounds. I'm doing Mr. Sterling a favor. He wants professionals dealing with his son's condition, not sentimental fools who think a smile is a substitute for therapy." She was gone before I could say another word. The click of her heels on the marble floor faded down the hallway, sounding like the ticking of a doomsday clock. I was fired. It was over. I wouldn't just be fired. Sterling's threat echoed in my mind. He'd make sure I was blacklisted, unemployable. My sister's face flashed in my mind, her worried smile, the pile of medical bills on her nightstand. I sank to my knees on the soft rug, the weight of my failure crushing me. A faint sound pulled me from my despair. A soft, scraping noise. I lifted my head. Leo was moving. He had pushed himself up from his corner and was slowly, deliberately crawling across the playmat. It was the most I had ever seen him move. He crawled right up to the little red block house, his destination clear. My breath caught in my throat. He reached the house, his small hand hovering over the yellow block inside. For a moment I thought he was going to take it out, to break our connection, but he didn't. Instead, his hand went to a nearby bin. He rummaged for a moment, his back to me, and then he turned. In his hand was a blue block. With painstaking slowness, he reached into the red house and placed the blue block right next to the yellow one. 2 blocks, side by side, inside the house. He looked up at me then, his gray eyes wide and pleading. He didn't have to speak. I understood the message perfectly. You and me, together. A fire ignited in my chest, burning away the fear. It wasn't just a job anymore. It wasn't about the money. This was about him. This was about this little boy who had found a voice in a world that demanded his silence. I couldn't abandon him. I wouldn't. I scrambled to my feet. I had to get to Sterling before Eleanor did. I had to explain. Maybe, just maybe, if he saw the proof, if he saw the tower, the blockhouse, he would understand. It was a fool's hope, but it was all I had. I raced out of the playroom, my heart hammering against my ribs. I practically flew down the grand staircase, my cheap sneakers skidding on the polished marble. I could hear Eleanor's voice coming from the direction of Sterling's study. I was too late. I rounded the corner just as she was stepping out of his office, that same venomous smirk on her face. Mr. Sterling stood in the doorway, his expression colder and harder than I had ever seen it. He looked like a man carved from granite. "My office. Now," he commanded, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the floor. My legs felt like lead as I walked past a gloating Eleanor and into the lion's den. He closed the doors behind me, the sound echoing like a tomb sealing shut. He didn't sit down. He just stood there, staring at me, his rage a palpable force in the room. "I gave you one rule," he began, his voice deceptively calm. "One simple, explicit instruction. And you chose not only to disobey it, but to do so flagrantly, deceitfully. You manipulated my son behind my back." "Mr. Sterling, please, if you would just let me explain," I started, my hands clasped in front of me to stop them from shaking. "It's not manipulation, it's communication. He's been responding. He's building things. He's making choices. He put a block in the house. He's trying to talk. He is nonverbal," he roared, his control finally snapping. He slammed a hand down on his massive desk, making a stack of papers jump. "He has selective mutism, brought on by severe trauma. He doesn't talk with building blocks. He needs structure, therapy, and professional intervention, not whimsical games with the hired help." "But it's working," I insisted, a desperate courage rising in me. "The professionals aren't getting through to him, but I am. I don't know why, but it's happening. He looked at me today, Mr. Sterling. He really looked at me." A flash of something unreadable crossed his face. Pain, anger, something deeper. That is irrelevant. You were given an order and you defied it. Pack your things. You have 10 minutes to be off my property." No. The word left my lips before I even realized I had thought it. It hung in the air between us, small and defiant. Alistair Sterling looked at me as if I had just grown a second head. Disbelief warred with fury in his eyes. "What did you just say to me?" "I said no," I repeated, my voice stronger now, fueled by the image of the 2 blocks in the house. "You can fire me. You can ruin me. I don't care. But you can't make me leave until you come with me. You need to see. You need to see what your son is trying to tell you." He stared at me, his jaw tight, a muscle twitching in his cheek. For a long, tense moment, the only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. I thought he was going to call security, to have me physically thrown out. Instead, he gave a short, harsh laugh devoid of any humor. "Fine," he sneered. "Fine. Let's go see this miracle. Let's see the great masterpiece of communication you've engineered. And when I see nothing but a pile of toys, I won't just fire you. I'll make you regret the day you ever filled out an application." He strode past me, flinging the office doors open and marching towards the stairs. I followed, my heart a wild drum in my chest. This was it, my one and only chance. As we ascended the grand staircase, I prayed with every fiber of my being that the little block house was still there, that Leo hadn't moved, that the scene I described was perfectly preserved. Sterling reached the playroom first. He threw the door open with such force that it slammed against the wall. He stood silhouetted in the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the frame. I peered past him, my stomach twisting into a knot of dread. The playroom was silent and empty. Leo wasn't in his corner. He wasn't on the playmat. The blockhouse, the 2 little figures inside, all of it gone. The entire playmat was bare, a pristine green square. Every single block was back in its bin, the lid shut tight. The room was sterile, tidy, and utterly devoid of the magic that had been there only minutes before. It was exactly as it was supposed to be, as if I had never been there at all. A deep, bone-chilling cold washed over me. It was as if the floor had dropped out from under me, leaving me in a free fall. I stared at the empty playmat, my mind refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. The tower, the house, the little block people all vanished. It was a complete and total reset. "Well?" Sterling's voice was a low, triumphant sneer. He turned his head, his grey eyes glinting with a cruel victory. "I'm waiting. Show me this communication." I stumbled past him into the room, my gaze darting around wildly. Where was Leo? I checked behind a large plush armchair, then peered into the toy tent in the corner. Nothing. He had simply disappeared. My desperate hope crumbled into dust. Eleanor must have come back. She must have cleaned it all up, erased the evidence, and taken Leo away just to make sure my humiliation was absolute. "It was here," I whispered, the words sounding hollow and pathetic even to my own ears. "There was a house made of red blocks right here, and he put a yellow block and a blue block inside. He did." Sterling let out a sound of utter contempt. "Enough. Your 10 minutes are up. Get out of my sight." He turned to leave, dismissing me as one would a fly. Tears of frustration and heartbreak stung my eyes. It wasn't just about the job. I felt like I had failed Leo. I had let him down. He had reached out, and I had been powerless to help him. As Sterling's hand touched the doorknob, a small voice, thin and reedy like an unused instrument, cut through the silence. "No." We both froze. The word was so quiet, so hesitant. It was almost carried away by the air. We turned in unison. Standing in the doorway of the adjoining ensuite bathroom was Leo. His small hand was gripping the doorframe, his knuckles white. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a terrifying mixture of fear and resolve, and he was looking directly at his father. Alistair Sterling stared at his son as if he'd never seen him before. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The rage, the arrogance, all of it drained from his face, replaced by a stunned, raw shock. Leo took a shaky step forward, then another. He walked past me, his eyes never leaving his father's face. He stopped at the large, clear bin filled with building blocks. His movements were jerky, uncoordinated, but filled with a fierce determination. He lifted the lid, the plastic making a loud scraping noise in the silent room. He reached inside and pulled out 4 red blocks. My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. With trembling hands, Leo knelt on the playmat. He painstakingly placed the blocks down, one by one, recreating the small square house exactly as I had made it. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft click of plastic on plastic. When the house was finished, he reached back into the bin. He pulled out a yellow block and placed it carefully inside. Then he pulled out a blue one and set it right next to the yellow. 2 blocks in the house. You and me. He looked up at his father, his small chest heaving with the effort and the emotion of it all. And then he did something that shattered the last of Alistair Sterling's composure. He pointed a tiny, trembling finger at the blue block. Then, slowly, he lifted that same finger and pointed it at me. After a moment's hesitation, he pointed back down at the yellow block. And then, with an expression of heartbreaking longing, he pointed that same small finger at his father. The meaning was so clear, so profound, it stole the breath from my lungs. Yellow wasn't me, yellow was him. And blue. Blue was his father. He hadn't been building a house for him and me. He had been building a house for him and his father. A home. A choked, ragged sound tore from Alistair Sterling's throat. He staggered back a step, his hand coming up to cover his mouth. His pale grey eyes, for the first time, were swimming with unshed tears. All the nannies, the therapists, the rigid schedules, they were all his misguided, desperate attempts to fix what he thought was broken in his son. He had built a fortress of rules and silence around Leo, believing it was protection, when all the little boy wanted was for his father to come inside. "Leo," he breathed, his voice thick and unrecognizable. He took a hesitant step forward, then another, until he was kneeling on the rug in his $1,000 suit, just a few feet from his son. He didn't seem to know what to do. His hands hovered in the air, trembling. Leo watched him, his own eyes shining. Then, with a quiet determination, he picked up the blue block, the father block, from inside the house. He held it out, a silent offering. Slowly, carefully, Alistair reached out and took the block from his son's hand. Their fingers brushed. For a long moment he just stared at the piece of blue plastic in his palm as if it were the most precious jewel in the world. Then he looked at Leo, a lifetime of regret and love in his gaze. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Leo, I am so sorry." He reached out and gently placed the blue block back inside the red house, right next to the yellow one. Then he opened his arms. And for the first time in what I imagined was a very, very long time, Leo crawled into his father's embrace and held on tight. I stood by the door, tears streaming silently down my face, a ghost witnessing a resurrection. I began to back away, to give them their moment. "Wait!" Alistair's voice stopped me. He was still holding Leo, but he was looking at me over his son's small shoulder. The ice in his eyes had melted, replaced by a profound, humbling gratitude. "Don't go," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Please, stay. I think we're going to need your help building our house." And as I looked at the billionaire and his son, huddled together over a simple house of red blocks on the floor, I knew I wasn't a maid anymore. I wasn't a nanny or a ghost. I was a builder, and we were finally home.